Hello, Davison. Superintendent Kevin Brown coming to you with another edition of Brown's Blog. Last week when I spoke to you, we talked a lot about our seniors and congratulated them on their graduation. Today I want to start my blog by again speaking to our now recent graduates from Davison High School, the class of 2020. As all of you probably know, last Friday, Governor Whitmer extended her stay-at-home, stay-safe order through June 12th. However, she is allowing groups of 10 or fewer people to congregate, and she's loosened some of the restrictions in that order as well. So we are not going to reschedule and again push back our scheduled pickup and drop off for our seniors. Our graduates have been through enough. They've waited long enough for their caps and gowns and their awards and certificates, and we just can't continue to push that back indefinitely. So we're going to follow through with allowing our seniors to come to the high school on June 9th and 10th of next week in order to drop off any school materials that they have in their possession, pick up their cap and gown, pick up any awards or certificates that they've earned, yearbooks and things of that nature. But we have asked Principal Jacobs to kind of tweak the procedure a little bit to ensure that kids do not have to get out of their cars. We're going to have stations where they can drive from one station to the next, so that they will not have to get out of their cars or contact with any other individuals. They can pop their trunk or the hatch or whatever they need to do, and things can be placed into their vehicle, and we'll have staff on site to pick up any things that need to be returned. If students do need to get into the high school to clean out their locker or to obtain personal belongings, Principal Jacobs will have a way for that to happen. We're going to make sure that no more than 10 students are admitted to the building at any one time. They are going to be required to wear masks and adhere to the social distancing guidelines in the governor's executive orders. You will receive a letter later this week that kind of details all of this information and a map for the route that students will take going from one station to the next at the high school. But we are going to allow that to happen next week as scheduled. The other thing I wanted to mention is we're continuing to have conversations regarding graduation. And we're still looking at June 29th or July 13th as possible dates for some type of a ceremony to take place. It is a little bit concerning that we are still under a stay-at-home, stay-safe order. And so, again, we question whether or not we will be able to have a traditional graduation ceremony, even if we wait until August to do that. Principal Jacobs does have some ideas, so we're going to send out another survey giving you a chance to weigh in on whether or not we've got some ideas for an in-person type of ceremony with greatly restricted numbers and adhering to the less than 10 and the social distancing things that we might be able to do and plan for. So we'll be sending that survey out this week as well to our graduates to get some input from them and their parents as to what they think should happen or what they would like to see happen with regards to graduation. I also want to talk a little bit about our return to school in the fall. In my last blog, I mentioned that we would conduct a survey of our parents of students in grades K through 11 about whether or not they felt comfortable sending their students back to school in the fall and in what capacity. So that survey will also go out tomorrow, and we ask for your participation in that so that we can help to plan for students eventually returning to school on August 17th. And then the last thing that I wanted to talk about today, I want to talk a little bit about school finance. Because while this COVID pandemic has taken a toll on our health, the public health of the state and the country, it's also taken an economic toll. And you may have heard or read in the news that schools are being told to expect some pretty significant cuts next year and possibly even yet this year. I think it's important to understand that as a public school, the Davison Community Schools are funded primarily through state aid, which are monies that are paid to the schools by the state of Michigan. The state of Michigan collects revenue mostly in the form of taxes, property taxes, sales tax, and employee paycheck taxes. And right now, because of the shutdown due to the pandemic, sales tax and payroll taxes are nowhere near what they would normally have been or are expected to be. And right now there's a $1.2 billion deficit in the school aid fund. A $1.2 billion deficit in the school aid fund translates to roughly $1,000 per student in funding for public schools. That's a drastic cut. I mean, that's a real significant. We receive about $8,000 a kid from the state. That money goes into our general fund, and 85% of our general fund goes to paying for the salaries and benefits of employees. The remaining 15% goes for supplies, operating costs, and things of that nature. But and recently, we've actually heard from some legislators that, you know, we could expect a cut of up to 25%. I mean, that's $2,000 a kid. I don't know how the school district would ever endure a $2,000 per student cut. But nonetheless, we're facing some pretty significant budget cuts for next year, and again, possibly this year, as I mentioned. If you think back to 2010, in 2010, we had a $470 per student cut. Some of you will remember how devastating that was. I'll never forget the board meeting that we had where the board had to lay off employees and cut programs. We had about 350 people that were in attendance that evening. It was pretty ugly. And now we're talking about a cut potentially twice that much or even more. So I don't know for sure yet what's to come, but we're hearing that, you know, a possible $700 per cut yet this year, which would be devastating because, quite honestly, our fiscal year ends June 30th. So we wouldn't be able to make any cuts. We'd have to come up with that money somewhere, somehow, possibly eating into our fund balance or taking it out of next year's budget, and an additional possibly $700 out of next year's budget as well. So the pending cuts could be very deep. They could be very extensive, and they could mean pretty serious cuts to some of the programs that we offer to our children. I know that recently the State Board of Education passed a resolution in support of maintaining educational services for children. I'm going to take a similar resolution to our Board of Education to be passed and sent on to our legislators as well. But we really could use everyone's help in fighting to maintain the funding that the education needs for us to provide services to our children. So I just wanted to kind of let people know that this pandemic, while it's wreaked havoc on our public health, it's also wreaking economic havoc, and that impact will be felt by schools. Hopefully our legislators will take action to preserve educational services and preserve funding for Michigan's public schools. But that still remains to be seen. So a little bit of good news in there for our 2020 graduates, that we're not going to push back your drop off and pickup date, and that we're still looking at options for a graduation ceremony. Look for that survey if you're a K-11 parent that comes out about returning to school in the fall. I'm going to stay guardedly optimistic that we'll be back in the fall and delivering face-to-face instruction, but we also want to be prepared in case we cannot do that or we have to pivot to an online or distance learning model at some point in the future. And then lastly, of course, the financial challenges that we may face, not that we are facing, but that we may face, due to the shutdowns caused from this by this pandemic. So with that, stay safe, Davison. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.